Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So as I'm filming this, it is the last day in June, so I thought I would just do an update on what I read in June and if I completed my whole June TBR. So I was very ambitious and I set myself the goal of reading 15 books in June. So I didn't quite read 15 books, but I did get quite close, so I did pretty well. If you've seen my June TBR video, then you know what books these are, but I just wanted to kind of show them and give you my star rating on them and just basically tell you how I felt about them. 7 out of the 15 books were actually in the Shatter Me series. I wanted to basically get through that series as quick as possible because I really enjoyed it. For my full reviews on each of those books, I've got a Shatter Me series reading vlog. I'll link that in the description if I can figure out how. So go and watch that if you want to know what my opinions were on the Shatter Me series. The first book I read in June was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you see my video about books I've been putting off, then you'll know that I put off reading this book for so long. I actually borrowed it from the library, so it's back in the library now, but I don't know why I put off reading that book so much because I really enjoyed it. The way that Taylor Jenkins Reid writes is so unique. I always feel like when I read her books, I am actually reading a true story. I do feel like I have to be in the mood to read one of her books. It just uses a bit more brain power. I don't really know why. But it was just such a fascinating read and I rated it 4 stars. The book is about a famous actress called Evelyn who uses the help of a writer called Monique to write her biography. And although that doesn't sound too interesting, it really is, and there is a twist as well. So yeah, it's just an interesting read and I do recommend it. The next book I read in June was literally my most anticipated book of 2024. And that is The Housemaid is Watching by Freida McFadden. Again, I don't have a physical copy of this book because I've actually lent it to somebody else, but I got it very soon after it was released and there were only 2 books left in the works, so I was very glad to get my hands on it. The Housemaid is Watching is the 3rd in the Housemaid series and I rated both the first and second book 5 stars. I absolutely love the series. And this was no exception because I also rated this 5 stars. I literally finished reading it in a day and it was just, I don't think it needed a 3rd book, but I still really enjoyed it. I feel like this book had less twists than a usual Freida McFadden book. Either that or I just kind of predicted them more. But the writing just seemed a lot more fleshed out, so I didn't really mind. Usually I want loads of twists and turns, but there were less in this book, but I still really enjoyed it. I think it's so important to find the characters interesting, and I love the characters in the Housemaid series. So yeah, it was definitely worth the wait, and if you haven't read any of the Housemaid series, I really recommend it. Another book that I finally got to read in June was I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I had been waiting for this from the library for a very long time. It seems like everybody wants to read it at the moment, and I can see why. I'm Glad My Mum Died is actually an autobiography by Jeanette McCurdy, basically outlining the events that have happened in her life. The events are very negative. It talks a lot about her mum abusing her and also eating disorders and, you know, just growing up as a child in the acting industry. So it is quite heavy. I would look at more specific trigger warnings if any of that seems like that might affect you. I just thought it was amazing how instead of taking hush money, she turned it around and shared her experiences and shared awareness for all the things that she went through. And I just really admire her for that. I really hope that this helps people spot the signs of abuse and also different mental health issues. It was so interesting to me to read from Jeanette's point of view and actually read the thought processes that were going on in her mind at the time. When you're reading it, you can see how those thoughts are flawed, but you can also see like how she was kind of thinking. I just really admire her writing about her experiences because that could not have been easy. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I did not give it a rating just because it's somebody's life and their personal experiences, so I felt a bit uncomfortable giving it a rating, but I do recommend it if it's something that you don't think will trigger you. It definitely opened my eyes, and it's also got me quite intrigued to read other autobiographies because that's not really a genre that I ever read. So another book I actually read very recently in June was Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. No idea if that's how you say his name. I mentioned it in my June TBR video, but my friend wanted to watch the film but actually said, oh, you might prefer reading the book. So I decided to read the book before watching the film. And I heard so much about the twist in this book. Like, everyone was saying, just prepare yourself, Charlotte, because the twist is really good. So I was very, very intrigued. This book is about a US Marshal called Teddy who comes to the island to basically try and find an escaped murderer. But then a hurricane comes and basically lots of things just kind of go south. I feel like this was a book I really had to pay attention to. I couldn't really just get lost in it. I had to have my full focus on it because like little things happened and I was like, wait, what? And I had to kind of reread it to understand what was going on. After reading the twist, I understand why it was so confusing to me. So I feel like this would be a good one to reread so you can kind of understand it more from the get-go. I did find it quite slow, so I wasn't a huge fan of it, and I was kind of thinking throughout majority of it, where is the hype from this? Where is it going? But to be fair, that twist was insane. It definitely made reading the book worth it, and I am intrigued to watch the film now, especially because Leonardo DiCaprio's in it. I did think that I would enjoy this book more, but I did like the twist and I am glad that I read it still. I rated Shutter Island 3 stars. The next book I read in June is One of Us Is Next by Karen M. McManus. This is the second book in the One of Us Is Lying series. This book wasn't really what I expected it to be. I expected to kind of get more from the characters of the first book, but I'm not really too mad at it because it kind of centers around different like secondary characters from the first book. I did really like how it focused more on Maeve because I find her a really interesting character. The thing about this book is that it's centered around a game of Truth or Dare, and I just didn't really find the mystery aspect of this book very intriguing, and it was just really slow to get into. I don't know if it was the fact that I was kind of in a book slump, but it just took me a long time to get into this book, and it's YA, so I really don't think it should have taken me that long to get into it. However, again, similar to Shutter Island, the ending did make up for it because it was very intriguing, and then there was an even more last minute twist, so that was really intriguing as well. It does make me want to read the third book, but knowing how different the first book is to the second book, I'm now starting to think, like, is the third book even going to relate to it? Who knows? I'm just going to have to read it and find out. So similarly to the first book in the series, I rated this 3 stars. So I'm filming this on the last day of June, and I have been trying all throughout June to read Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I don't know why, but I just feel like this book put me into a reading slump. I was stuck on 10 pages of this book for so long. I just could not get into it, and I just kept rereading the first 10 pages. However, last night I picked it up again, it started it from the beginning again, and I've actually managed to get a decent amount through it now. And I am finding it quite intriguing. I am enjoying this more than I enjoyed Normal People, so I'm glad that I've kind of stuck with it, but this definitely put me into a slump, which kind of offset me for the rest of June. Obviously, because I'm like halfway through it, I can't really give my opinions in this video, but I'm not going to do that in this video anyway because I'm saving it for another video. But I will be finishing this today, so it's still technically what I read in June. So those are all the books I read in June, obviously including the Shatter Me series, which I talked about in a different video. If you watched my June TBR video, then you'll know that I also had Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score on my June TBR. I am so excited to read this, but I just haven't picked it up, and I really need to pick it up after I finish Conversations with Friends, I think, because I'm so excited to read it, so I need to stop putting it off. Yeah, I think it was just this one technically that was in my June TBR video, but I said, oh, I could read the third one as well, so that's gonna have to be carried over to my July TBR. I am very excited to read them, but I think I was quite ambitious with my June TBR, and bearing in mind I got into a book slump, it just wasn't really feasible reading that many books. And I didn't even think about the fact that I was away in June as well, and I never read as much when I'm away because I'm obviously like seeing people doing things and I'm more busy. So yeah, that is what I read in June. I almost completed my June TBR, so I'm quite impressed. And it was a very varied month. I read some really good 5-star books, but then I also read some books that I wasn't really a massive fan of. So I definitely had a lot of variance this month. If you've read any of the books that I read this month, then leave a comment and let me know what you thought. And yeah, I'm excited for July to start, so I can think about what books I'm going to read that month. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later.